Hello, today I want to talk about Mercedes and BMWs, especially of the old ones, like in 1960s and 1970s. We did have a 1960, I think, 60s model BMW 1800 Ti, and which was very advanced, very fast for that time. And then we also had, my father had a Mercedes 190 1960s model, and both of these cars were, of course, the Mercedes was very strong, had a strong body, thick thick gauge metal body. That was basically very strong, and very thick comparing to the modern cars. And BMW was also fast, fast for its time, and even fast for now. It was a four-door sedan, but as I said, it was 1800 or 1800 Ti model. These cars back then, they were considered advanced and ahead of their time. And basically, this was the time when Toyota was making like matchbox cars. Honda was making cars so small that you could put one in your pocket. But nowadays, with the competition from Japan, Mercedes is not what it used to be. It doesn't mean it's not as strong. The body is very strong, and it doesn't mean BMW is not fast. But unfortunately, even the Japanese and especially Germans, they opted for modern technology, and they put more and more technology in it. Like the car decides for itself what to do. The headlight that turn around around the curves, around the corners, and what the seat warmers. I lived in a very cold state in the U.S., and there were times that the temperature was minus 0 Fahrenheit, not centigrade, 0 centigrade. It was already 32 Fahrenheit, but 32 Fahrenheit, but minus 0 Fahrenheit is well below 0 centigrade. And then I also remember the nights or days minus 10, minus 15, and record number 3 days in a row in November minus 22 Fahrenheit. At any case, the point I'm making is that in the very cold environment, I was able to start my Toyota, my old Corona, and just took time to scrape the window. But nowadays there's so much technology. Having a Jaguar XJ6, I know from personal experience that a car that has technology that especially is ahead of its time, it will be so expensive to fix. Most of these luxurious cars are not good for almost 95% of the population. If you're very rich, you buy one, and when it comes to fixing them, you just get rid of them. It means nothing to you. You have it as a tax write-off. But for most people, it doesn't make sense to buy luxury cars. It doesn't make sense to buy Mercedes and BMWs. When you buy a Mercedes, and especially BMW nowadays, excuse me, the resale price is very low. And one reason for it is in the US, the labor is very high. And also to work on car, the labor is very high, and the parts are very expensive. So a BMW is basically worthless if you buy one new. Again, unless you're very rich, then you buy it and use it and then get rid of it 3 years later, 2 years later, perhaps 1 year later. But under no circumstances I recommend buying a Mercedes, a new BMW. If you're really in love with the models, you can buy used ones, because the used ones are already depreciated. But even the used ones need parts. They need basically many things that are very expensive, and the labor, as I mentioned, is very high. Almost 30 years ago, Jaguar, I guess, dealership in the US, they used to charge $90 an hour to work on it, and they may get it done in like excuse me, in 10 minutes, but they still charge you what is the recommended labor time. So if the book says, for example, 3 hours work, in the US they charge you based on the 3 hours, even though they might have done it in 1 hour. They won't give you two hours off. They basically charge you for the full amount. And the parts are also expensive, and in the US they do not use other people's parts. I mean, you cannot buy a part, take it to your mechanic, because he says, I cannot warranty that. And he's right, but he cannot warranty that. The store warranties the part, but he will not honor it. So he says, okay, I will not use it. I have to use my own part because I can put a warranty on it. So there's all kinds of tricks and loopholes that they use to charge you lots of money. When the competition from Japan came in 1970s, the Japanese cars were small and were still, I don't want to say it, but were pretty much ugly. I remember Corolla 1970s, early 70s, they were just nothing to brag about. I mean, the beauty, there was no beauty. The only reasons American moved to Toyota and Japanese cars back then was because of the oil problems of oil boycott of 1972, when they had the Arabs and Israelis war. But at any case, they tried to save money on gas, and Americans gradually started moving to smaller cars. Well, the Japanese cars were made for a Japanese person of average size, and they were too small for most Americans. And the Japanese industries, the car industries, they realized that. Then in early 80s, they started making their cars a little bit bigger and bigger, and now, as you can see, some of them are maybe bigger than some of our SUVs. So they catered it to the American market and perhaps to the European market, but especially to the American market. At any case, German cars were good back then because they were basically the only ones that had quality. But now the quality comes from Japan. And Japan, like cars like Camry and Honda Accord and Civic and Corolla, are benchmark for the industries. But that doesn't mean every Corolla, every Corona, every Honda is quality. Some of them are basically lemon, depending on the time of the day they put it together or who put it together. Maybe it bypassed the inspection. Maybe the inspectors were kind of, it depends on lots of factors. So not every engine in a Corolla, every engine in Camry, depending on the year and the model, is good. So they have their own problems. Most of my cars for past 40, 50 years, they were Toyotas. And they had problems. I bought them used, but they had problems, but I had them fixed. But anyway, I would stay away from luxury cars for several reasons. Again, one of them is the high price for fixing them. The parts are very expensive. And the other thing is that when you buy a new car, again, when you want to resell it, it doesn't have the value that it used to have. So the old Mercedes 180D, I mean, would almost never, I mean, it never died. The drivers swore by it, and then they had it for many, many years. Overseas, they used to call them driver killers, meaning that the driver would die before the car would ever die. So that was the quality back then, but now it's a different story. I would stay away from luxury cars, especially Italian cars, which I have driven, Alfa Romeo, I've driven old Fiat Classic. So I would stay away from it unless you're like some celebrities and you want to fill your garage with many cars, so you brag about it, you show it off, and you get I guess, self-esteem. Your self-esteem is increased by having things. If you're that kind of person and you have millions of dollars, by all means buy. Okay, I hope this was enough to steer some of you who cannot afford these cars away from them. Okay, and God bless. Take care.